Review Committee meeting to order. I would like to go ahead and call today's Policy Review Committee meeting to order, May 16th, 2024 at 4 p.m. Mr. Gaither, will you please call the roll?
Representing Educational District 6 and Chair of this committee, Ms. Ishay Collins.
Present.
Representing Educational District at Large Seat 7, Mr. Chevy Brooks, and I know he's planning to join us virtually.
Until he's here present.
And representing Educational District at Large Seat 8, Ms. Cynthia Briscoe Brown.
Present.
I do also want to acknowledge that we do have Board Member Retta Balden, who are with us virtually, and then, of course, our Deputy Superintendent and General Counsel present. With that being said, Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Great, thank you so much. I will now entertain a motion to approve today's agenda.
So moved.
It's been properly moved by Cynthia Briscoe Brown. Do I second it? I second it. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I will now entertain a motion to approve the minutes from last month's Policy Review Committee meeting.
So moved.
It's been properly moved by Cynthia Briscoe Brown, seconded by Ishay Collins. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We will now turn it over to discussion items, starting with discussion item A, the Board Regulation BBF-R8 on the Community Equity Advisory Committee for final approval. I will now turn it over to Deputy Superintendent Long.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for your consideration of this proposed change to our board regulation addressing the Community Equity Advisory Committee. This version would be for final approval at your June meeting. It incorporates the edits that we previously discussed in terms of the terms of membership for those advisory committee members, how they will be appointed to two-year terms that align with the appointing board member. We explicitly state that the superintendent may appoint their committee members at will, and that advisory committee members shall remain in place until replacements are appointed by the Board of Education members or the superintendent. There's language further down describing the resignation and vacancy process for advisory committee members. We talk about the membership commitments. Up under those 4 commitments, we lay out that committee members who fail to uphold the commitments are subject to reprimand by their appointing board member, the full Board of Education, and or the superintendent, and that will be a reprimand in writing. A sentence about the meeting schedule and the process for amending norms for this board regulation.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Erica.
And I think I've summarized the changes that we discussed last month to this board regulation.
Great. Cynthia?
Yeah, I think this captures everything we added at the last one. There's some formatting weirdnesses in item D and in the paragraph below that, which I said we'll clean up.
Yes.
Before we actually publish it to Assembly. But I am comfortable with passing this on to the full board.
Got it. I don't have any questions or thoughts. I think we're good to go there.
Thank you.
I do want to thank the committee, which I know has worked hard and long on this. This has been a long time coming. We were talking about it even way back when we were holding Zoom meetings because of pandemic. So I do want to thank them for all their hard work, and also our leadership within APS who has guided them in formulating this and really getting it to a place where we all understand the purpose of the committee and the commitments that our members make.
Yes,
So
thank you.
thank you.
Thank you for that, and thank you, Ms. Love, for your continued leadership of that Equity Advisory Committee and our equity work in general.
Committee Chair Collins had to step out for just a minute, but we can go ahead and begin discussion of Board Policy JAA, Equal Educational Opportunities.
And I'm sorry, I know you just said this, but I just want to make sure. I think I was doing a couple of things. We are moving this forward for final approval.
Yes.
That was all right, thank you.
Yeah, I think we had consensus among myself and Committee Chair Collins, and that should do it. Has Board Member Brooks joined us yet? Okay. Good. Okay. Then let's go ahead and address that.
Board Member Brooks, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you so much. I was sitting in chat trying to raise my hand. But yes, I am here.
Okay. Did you have any comments regarding the first policy, the equity policy?
No, I just wanted to echo what Board Member Briscoe Brown stated, that, just thank you to everyone for their hard work on this, and I'm proud to support it.
All right. Then let's move on to Board Policy JAA, Equal Educational Opportunities.
Yes.
Erica Long, could you brief us on this?
Thank you. The proposed change to this policy adds language taken from the National Crown Act, where we spell out that we are not a place for discrimination of students with respect to hair texture, protective hairstyles, including braids, locks, twists, or bantu knots. We would mention that in two places here in the Equal Educational Opportunity Policy. One where we say that students are entitled to protection on these factors, and another where we say that no student shall be subject to discrimination. We would then take that same language, and in our next policy, the revision to the student dress code, we spell out those hair-related factors.
Question. Do we need to say including but not limited to? Just because this may not be
Everything,
saying including and not saying but not limited to implies that these are the only 4 styles that are protected.
yes.
And hairstyles change so rapidly that I would hate to have to revise this policy every time a new hairstyle comes up.
As well as terminology
Right.
or just common language. I think that that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and I think in both places here and on the next policy as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I support that as well. Thank you for bringing that up, Board Member Briscoe Brown, because we do want to future-proof this as well. So I really support that.
All right, so do we want to, looks like,
We got to wait for Board Member Collins to come back because you technically don't have a quorum right now.
okay, right, because we only have one of us here. All right, then let's put that aside, and as soon as she comes back, we'll go straight to passing that on. Go ahead and move to Board Policy JCDB, Student Dress Code. Erica Long, I think we just addressed this, but let's go ahead and do it again.
We did. So in this policy change, the third paragraph, we take that Crown Act language with respect to hair texture, protective hairstyles, and we would insert a phrase including braids, locks, twists, bantu knots, or including but not limited to braids, locks, twists, or bantu knots.
Okay.
And there were no further changes to the dress code, just the insertion with respect to hair.
Okay. And Committee Chair Collins has rejoined us to catch you up. We've discussed Board Policy JAA. We've made one change here. Every time it says including, we've said including but not limited to.
Got it. Yep.
And also would ask that that addition be made on Board Policy JCDB. And we need you to ask whether we recommend moving this onto the full board in both cases.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Thank you, previous policy chair. Great way. Okay. And anything else on this?
Shivy's with us, by the way.
Okay,
And he entered into the discussion.
great. Okay. Shivy, are you good with everything?
Yes, I am. I actually had a question for clarity as well. Is there anything in our dress code that bars scholars from wearing hats? I didn't see anything, and I just wanted clarification on that because obviously it's come up in public comment a couple times.
Hold on one second. So,
We have historically done that.
but when you look at the most recent version of the policy, remember our section on restrictions where we're barring things is a lot shorter than it previously was. So we're restricting clothing and jewelry that contain words or symbols that are gang-related, sexually suggestive, obscene, etc. We're restricting items that contain advertisement or display of words or symbols associated with alcohol, drugs, tobacco. Students may not wear flip-flops, athletic slides, or footwear that does not support the front and back of the foot. But there is no specific restriction against hats. Remember, there has been discussion in the past about hoodies. From a safety standpoint, students can be asked to remove the hood from their head so that we can identify all of our students in the building. But no, there is no specific prohibition against wearing hats.
Thank you for clarification on that. I just wanted to be sure that things that I brought up to the community in regards to the belief that there was a prohibition on headwear for students was actually not in policy.
It is not, but just to be absolutely candid, the things that we discuss here as a policy committee, particularly on this question of dress code, information and guidance that we've provided as an administration to principals around dress code, that's one thing. But the question of practices, when we're talking about individual school settings and thousands of students, I cannot absolutely say that there's no student who has not had comments to them, take your hat off your head. I have spent quite a bit of time and had many conversations reiterating to our school communities your feeling as a board around student dress code and how it should not be used in a way to remove students from their instructional environment. But I would not want to say to you that no student has never been told that's the case.
Absolutely. And I think that was also a part of our conversation in regards to the Crown Act language in our dress code, that we wanted to have a norm across all schools so that we don't have nuanced interpretations of dress code from one school to another school. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep. Sorry, you all, just also juggling a quick staff issue. We're good to go, Shiv? You good?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for your comments. I think we're good to move that forward for final approval at the June 3rd,
Yes,
June 3rd board meeting.
and that's both policy JAA and policy JCDB. Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
And we'll just make those minor inclusions and we're good to go there.
Yes. Next policy for discussion, policy BBBC, board development.
All right, so policy, are we looking at this, there are two things. I have policy BBBC, on development opportunities, and then the inclusion of a actual committee policy. Pierre,
That's correct.
okay,
So one is in regards to the actual policy, updating that language, and then the other one is the creation of policy from the Board Development Committee regarding making the Board Development Committee a standing committee.
Baldwin, she's on, okay, so let's start with the actual conversation about the Board Development Committee being a standing committee.
Is that the document that says Board Development Committee Policy?
Yes.
Okay.
So historically, we've had, thank you, Aretta. Board Member Baldwin, who chairs the Board Development Committee. Can you provide for us background as to the creation of this? Can you provide for us some additional context and the background of the creation of this policy, but also the purpose and intent from the committee to feel that this should move to be an actual codified standing committee?
Thank you. Yes. So you do have two documents. So starting first with the board development, it says policy, but we are not policy writers, which is why we're coming to you to have this discussion. And we are recommending that board development become a formal committee and that they focus their work around 4 strategic pillars. 1, around the Council of Great City Schools Student Outcomes Focused Governance Framework. 2, the continuing education of the board. 3, the development and evaluation of our board governance. And 4, strategic planning. What you have in front of you is very, very, very rough. We need your input and expertise in terms of making this formal. And we also believe that it should be a conversation that we also have with our student outcomes focused governance coach to make sure that this is aligned with SOFG governance and any input or suggestions that they have. But we thought that we should start with the policy committee. And then the other document that you have in front of you are just changes that would accompany the conversations that we've had within the board development. So
okay.
I turn it back over to you for any additional questions.
Okay, really quick before we take any deeper dive question, what are the standing committees that is codified in our policy?
This Policy Review Committee, Budget Commission,
And-
Audit Committee,
Audit
Accountability, right?
and accountability. Okay, so 4 standing committees already: audit, accountability, policy review, and budget commission. Okay, all right. Go, Cynthia.
Yeah, a couple of questions. First, I think the only committee of our current standing committees that has non-community members on it is audit. Is there a compelling reason that the community should be involved in board development? And I guess I'm addressing that to Aretta.
Yeah, and I'm going to tap here as well, but I believe that this is part of best practices that has been recommended either from, is it GSBA or is it from Council of Great City Schools, Pierre?
So that is a GSBA. So as we compete and we start doing board evaluations, the conversation in order for us to be considered an exceptional board requires that you have community engagement around specifically the evaluation tool. And so it could be whatever tool it is, but that there is some type of engagement from that of community. The board development actually started, we actually had 3 community stakeholders who were a part of the committee. So it kind of started it, but we're just incorporating that as part of the language. And I believe it's up to 3 as it relates to that.
Is the recommendation that all of our committees have such members, or just
No,
just the ones involved with evaluation?
yeah, just this one, just the board development committee.
Just board development?
Yes.
Okay.
But evaluation is being stated as a part of this, not the whole of it. So having the community members in it on the committee is to make to have voice in every one of these pillars, not just the evaluation.
I think that would be, so the purpose of the community advisors was specifically around the evaluation tool. I do think that we just need to figure out if that's the goal as it moves forward, but it was specifically around evaluation.
And we are, well, I would have to confirm with the committee, but I believe that we are open to whatever suggestions and changes. Again, this is not our area of expertise, so we definitely want to build to make this better, and so we are open to any changes.
Yeah.
And that makes sense what you said. So I don't know how we verbally align that, but again, this is just a draft.
So I would want to look at that and limit, it does say at least 2 outside non-voting advisors, and then at the end it says for evaluation purposes. I'd like to see that fleshed out a little more. Also, how those will be appointed. It says the board is allowed to appoint, but I would want to see, if there are only 2, then it's not going to be, 1 per board member, and I'd like to see a little more of a process developed around that.
Yeah, definitely.
Next, and this again, because this is the exception to the rule among our standing committees, and that is the committee members electing their own chair. Was there a reason for that particular preference as opposed to the way we typically do it, which is to have the board chair appoint the committee chair?
It was a suggestion that came from the committee. The audit committee also
audit committee
operates
does
like that.
Yeah. So replicating what the audit committee does, where the audit committee selects its chair.
Yes.
But the chair cannot be a community member. It has to be a board member, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
But if we were to flesh this out and sort of remove that community piece from the preamble and create a second session, then you avoid that piece of confusion, Cynthia.
Yeah.
You think? Okay.
Yeah. I was just confused about that.
Yep.
And Madam Chair, I do just want to just go back to the committee appointment. It will operate similarly, my understanding, to how the audit committee works. So those appointments are made through that particular committee. So not every board member has an opportunity to appoint the 3 community advisors on that. It will happen through the committee.
Yeah.
It would be the recommendation of the committee. I'm sorry.
That's not what this says.
Right,
though.
exactly. And and that's what we're saying, when you guys remove this phrase and kind of create a separate subsection of that, flushing that portion out. Because I do recall, I don't know, Cynthia, remember when we first, of course, it's over a decade ago, when we first joined the board, and it wasn't us, but when there was the revision to the board development committee, I know there was that, that advisory group. It was a small advisory group or something that was a part of it, but it became, that was after was it Seeks? What Sachs?
It was, it was a follow-on from the Sachs
from
work
the
that
Sachs
our
work.
predecessors did.
Right, and so there was the concern about so much input and recommendations on what board development should be, that it almost felt that it was the pressure piece of it versus board members having the full say so of what for me as a board member, what I feel I need as development versus outside entities telling me what I need,
Is there any clarification on what qualifies a community member to be an advisor to that committee?
Right now, it's just residents of the city of Atlanta
Right.
or who work for an entity that has a business office in the city of Atlanta, which is why I think we may want to flesh that out a little more.
Absolutely.
Cause you talking about,
I mean, I find one thing that I find very interesting about school boards, especially being the green one here, is how much guidance we take from outside entities on how to do this work. And you don't see that in other governing bodies ever, just in school board. And I think any more opportunities for us to now bring in, folks with their own individualized interests that maybe are not education focused, having say so on how the board does its work is just something that I want us to be very cautious of and intentional about. If we're gonna have folks advising how we govern, I personally feel like there should be some inclusion of language that specifies that there are people who, A, deal in governance, or B, are actual educators or deal in education. I could see this going the wrong direction very easily if we're not intentional about that.
No, I mean, that's a great point. I think that's kind of like the concern as far as pulling this out and having the board development committee to flesh this portion out for that, for that very reason. And I do recall that was a conversation when we had first joined the board over a decade ago about that tension, right? Like, who, there was so much pressure externally that a board member should do this, that, and the third, and board members felt that that's not the development that I need as a, as a board member, that's, or collectively, so. Okay, and the only other thing that I would say for this, just a quick revision, instead of referencing the Council of Great City Schools Student Outcome Governance Framework, why don't we just say the Student Outcomes Focused Governance Framework, since as a school system,
Nina, I think Nina may have something to say about that. Sorry.
I was
I
like,
caught
what
you
you
with your
talking
mouth.
about?
Mid-snack.
Yeah.
And you also got
Poor
me
Nina, I'm
distracted.
sorry.
Got distracted for a half a second. I didn't hear the last bit of it. Can you please repeat that?
No, I just said, so the first pillar just references Council of Great City Schools Student Outcome Focused Governance Framework. And all I was just saying is, as far as, is it appropriate just to admit the Council of Great City Schools? Because, I mean, the reality is, it's so specific that we may, if future boards decide to move away from this, then we'll need to revise this.
And we have discussed this with reference to other policies, I think most recently with the literacy policy.
It's certainly not illegal for you to reference the Council of Great City Schools, but I tend to have a default where if you can avoid naming a third-party organization in your policy, avoid naming a third-party organization in your policy.
Yep.
I think that it's clear that the board has committed to student outcomes focused framework. So just having that phrase in there doesn't really give me heartburn, because I think if there was ever a decision to change that philosophy, it would be a pretty momentous change that a policy revision wouldn't be such a big deal. But we can't always know that the council is going to own this framework. They may become another organization tomorrow. So if we can avoid that kind of confusion, let's avoid it.
So remove it?
Just remove the
Yeah,
name of the
so
organization.
just that one piece, just remove it.
And out of curiosity, how long is our commitment to the Student Outcomes Focused Governance Framework? How long is our commitment to the Council of Greater City Schools? And where are we on that commitment now?
So the contract that the board approved goes through December of 2025. The only thing that it specifically actively required the board to do was to adopt a timeline within 3 months of executing the contract, which this board did. Beyond that, it's really just a commitment to let's make our best efforts to stay the course until December of 2025.
And so there's no recourse for the board in terms of meeting the timeline set?
And when you say recourse, from which direction?
I don't know, from Council of Greater City Schools, from,
So as I read the contract, there's a fee that the board paid to be part of it, which is relatively nominal, and then there's which does not even come close to covering the actual costs that the council incurs.
And what does that cost by?
It's $40,000 for 2
Okay.
years, and that covers the entire 2 years.
Educator lens, that's not nominal, but I heard that.
But in
I understand.
coming off of budget commission,
I understand.
and certainly pennies make dollars. I certainly understand that. The penalty that is built into the contract is if the board terminates the contract ahead of time. And if the board does that, and that would require a board vote, then the board would be liable for the actual costs that the council incurred as part of its work, not to exceed $100,000.
And that work is the Student Outcomes Focused Governance,
Correct.
the coach that comes with it, and all the et ceteras.
That's right.
Thank you for that clarification.
So I think for discussion on the standing committee piece, we are okay knowing that, we're good with including this as a as a standing committee once, well, before I jump that gun. Sorry, before I jump to that conclusion, so we provided input to take back for the Board Development Committee, Board Member Baldwin, for revision, and then once that's brought back to us, we'll continue the conversation in terms of fleshing it out and getting into a solid policy point. Is that okay?
Yes, I have one quick question. Do you want us also to meet with our soft G coach and run this by her before coming back to you as well? Or do you, as the policy committee, want to take the lead on that part?
No, no, absolutely. I would say meet with our coach to get their thoughts on this as a policy piece and making sure that it does in fact include best practices, as we're gonna, as the goal is to create this as a standing policy,
Okay.
a standing committee and a standing policy. Ooh.
Okay, so we need to flesh out the community piece and make that clearer, as well as review with our coach and then come back in front of y'all.
Yeah,
Sounds
I will
great.
remove that from that preamble altogether
Yes.
and create it as a subsection and and flesh it out some more.
Excellent. I think Erica or someone has been editing in real time, and I appreciate that.
Erica, I
Erica.
think.
Okay.
It-
Thank you for your time and attention to this.
No problem. Thank you. I appreciate this.
Does this policy also spell out the frequency that this committee will meet? Because I don't see that language in there. Does it have to?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
I don't think any of our stand-up committee policies denote a frequency.
And quite honestly, that varies depending on the work needed to be done by
Right.
the committee. Accountability meets a lot less often than some of the other committees because it has a very specific function.
Same with audit.
And, even the policy review committee doesn't meet every month.
Okay, yep. All right, so we'll go ahead and change over, still sticking with board member development, but going to policy BBBC on development opportunities. And particularly, this focuses on board member, the purpose and scope of professional development, and what that entails. Deputy Superintendent Long, do you have any, I know this is not a marked up copy, so it'll be good to know.
Yeah, and this is just the policy as is.
Okay.
So since we're bringing it for discussion, this is the current policy on board member development opportunities. You see there's a preamble statement at the beginning
I
laying,
think this is a revised
So these might end up being able to be one. I don't know if these can be combined, but this is what was board development opportunities, but is not about a committee.
Yeah, so the changes that you see are those changes, I believe, that board leadership wanted to submit as it relates to what was happening, just
Yeah,
to kind of, and so
What
I
I'm
do
saying
have
is
a
that we
markup.
don't have a color copy, so we don't know. Okay, that'd be great. Yeah, that'll help a lot.
gotcha, thank you. No, you're fine.
Okay, Aretta, this is under your committee as well, right?
So this is what was submitted from board leadership.
So this wasn't submitted from the Board Development Committee? Should it have been?
Has the board development committee reviewed this?
Not as a committee.
Okay,
I feel like maybe that needs to happen before.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I feel like board development needs to look at this since it is in fact called board member development opportunities.
Absolutely. So what we'll do is it, committee members, is it okay for us to table this discussion, push this back to the actual committee and, for the committee to review and provide additional thoughts and feedback and then come back to the policy committee? Or Cynthia
That's
and
fine.
Shivy?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay. I think that is appropriate. That is what that committee is for. And the last thing I would want us to do is overstep our, boundary and put something in place and we have a actual committee And probably this is why you're asking to be a standing committee too, to prevent things like this. So we'll do that. We'll table this for now. Deputy
Okay.
Superintendent, are
Thank
you
you.
good with that?
Yes, yes.
Madam General Counsel, are you good with that? Okay. All right. All right. And so then the next thing that we have for discussion is the exemptions to the physical education graduation requirement. This is something that has been brought to, actually, you know, comes to us almost annually in terms of the additional PE requirement that we require our students to complete, and what are the actual physical activities that qualifies to allow students to exempt. I know we started this conversation last month. I know there's been a lot of advocacy over the years about it, so I'm going to turn it over to you, Madam Deputy Superintendent, and I know you have representatives from the administration as well.
Yes, and thank you for this. Thank you for this discussion of a very important and timely issue. You all heard from a student as a board within recent months. You've heard from a student's parent with respect to a club sport that they participate in and would like to be able to use that club sport experience as an exemption to our PE requirement. Of course, physical education is one of the requirements within our graduation requirement, which is set by the board. We're joined today by our district athletic director, Mr. Corey Collier. Please feel free to come up to the podium. And Ms. Johnson-Jelks is on the Zoom. Of course, Ms. works on the academic side of the house with respect to health and PE. Those are academic subjects. Corey is here from the athletic standpoint. And just to help give this committee an understanding of the factors that we bring into play when we're deciding which sports and which activities are appropriate for that PE exemption. We are fortunate that we offer a lot of many sports, many activities as a district, both through our relationship with the Georgia High School Association, as well as the burgeoning community of club sports that are available in schools across the district. But those offerings also require us to be thoughtful as an administration about how we give out that PE exemption and keep different operational and managerial concerns in mind, particularly around the activity itself, whether the activity is physical in nature. There are a couple of activities that are sanctioned by the GHSA, so technically they are sports, but they are not actually physical. Literary, one-act play, esports.
Hey, now.
I enjoyed the esports tournament, but I didn't break a sweat. But just, you know, right, and questions about how club sports are managed. These are outside organizations. You know, we do not have a say in identifying the adults who manage and the operations of club sports. The same way that, of course, all of our GHSA sports are organized and are led by district employees. So I'll turn it over to Corey Collier to walk us through some of that thinking, but our hope is that we will continue to be able to use appropriate guardrails as an administration when we're making decisions about how and whether to extend that PE exemption, so that we can keep all of those operational factors in mind.
Thank you, Deputy Superintendent Long and Board Committee Chair, committee members. One thing that Department of Athletics that we do is we strive to follow the policies that are set before us within GHSA. And they are very specific in the items that that our coaches, head coaches specifically for those sanctioned GHSA sports have to follow. And just with the 19 actual sports that the Atlanta Public Schools that we offer to our students, and also with the ones that Deputy Superintendent Long mentioned, those sports, those that are deemed activities within GHSA. They're sanctioned, but they're activities. There are many things that we have to go through, that we look through that GHSA requires for our coaches. And that's the main thing. One of the main things that we look for is who are we putting in front of those kids? You're talking about the sports that are offered at all of our schools. All of our schools have the opportunity to offer those particular sports, those GHSA sanctioned sports. Those sports are also governed by not just the Department of Athletics, but also GHSA. They have state sanctioned bylaws that they have to follow. When we look at club sports, they may have bylaws and sanctions, but those are not things that we govern, because those are not things that fall under GHSA. We look at the state association eligibility requirements as it pertains to academics, the scholastic standings, APS, along with GHSA. We say that head coaches must be certified teachers. We know that certified teachers have some different requirements that they have to go through, unlike others, particularly when we're talking about club sport and leaders of club sports. We're talking about the coaches' certifications that they have to go through, sports rules clinics, first aid, sportsmanship, NFHS, concussion, just to name a few. Regulations of competitions. There are certain guidelines that GHSA offers when it comes to those regulations. Funded program, APS funded programs. We have a hand in the funded programs of GHSA and APS athletics. We're talking about the beginning and end dates. We have regulations as to when those things must begin and when they must end, in reference to the actual school year. The Officials Association, once again, we have that a liability insurance that is a part of GHSA, but also we have something within APS as well. And then last but not least, we have that participation physical that must be done when we're looking at the health and the safety of those student athletes. So there are a lot of requirements that GHSA, our governing athletic association, has for those sanctioned sports. And when we look at the sports that are not under GHSA, now we're saying that those particular sports, whatever those sanctions, whatever those rules are, because they don't fall under GHSA, which we fall under as well, now there's a disconnect there with those particular things.
So your recommendation is, in terms of those additional sports, to not include them?
We want to continue with the policy that is in play, that is in hand right now, which is to remain with the GHSA sanctioned sports.
We are only one of two districts that still that are not recognizing. I mean, that don't allow other additional sports outside of the GHSA sanctioned sports. I remember this conversation when it came to flag football. And what year did GS, when they finally kind of succumbed to all of
I think it was it's been in play now for about 3 years.
Yeah, and it was something that we have been fighting for since I had joined the board. And so it's like there is, well, and Ultimate Frisbee has been one of those, competition cheer has been one of those. I remember the Maze girl, a few years ago, like right before COVID, the Maze girls, cheerleader squad was coming to talk about it being recognized and just the heavy investments that they were making, not only just kind of physically, but financially, and wanting just some reprieve for it to even be counted as a credit.
Yes. Well, and with respect to Ultimate Frisbee, we've had substantial conversations with the parents who are with students active in Ultimate Frisbee. And they understood, after some dialogue, they understood the advantages that we get as an administration hewing to that GHSA certification. And they started the work of getting themselves organized to appeal to GHSA to eventually certify Ultimate Frisbee. But they were informed by the agency that that is not an avenue for them. outside of Metro Atlanta, there's very little, if any, interest in Ultimate Frisbee across the state. Because there is so little statewide interest, GHSA has made it clear to the parent community that Ultimate Frisbee won't become a GHSA sport. For that reason, and because we've heard from the organization that that's not an avenue available to them, we will open up the PE exemption to Ultimate Frisbee.
Okay.
We understand that takes into account the fact that that avenue is just not available. And it shows, we believe it shows some flexibility on the part of the administration, knowing that this is an activity that's physical in nature. So as a practical matter, it seems appropriate for the PE exemption, and that certification from the GHSA is just not going to happen for Frisbee anytime soon.
Are there any other activities from an equitable standpoint that can also, that the administration is also, are there any other activities that also the administration would consider to include under this exemption? And like I said, I know at once I would have been advocating for flag football because it's been such a big deal at Thurl, and I mean this year they're the champs, right?
Yeah.
So glad to see that the Georgia High School Association finally added that. But when I think about like the competition cheerleading, I can't remember the other sports or other activities that are taking place. Are there any other that we also could consider for that exemption?
So I hope that we're showing openness to the exemption itself.
Okay.
I would not want to speak on specific activities right here,
Okay.
right now, without knowing the interest level from our school communities and how widespread that interest is. But we do not want adult considerations and GHSA viewpoints on different activities to be too much of a barrier to making opportunities available for students. So we're comfortable in the case of the Ultimate Frisbee.
Got it.
So I'm grateful for us having some movement to make exceptions outside of the GHSA sanctioned sports. But I think there's also like a more broad conversation as a board that we can have around the 0.5 credit requirement that we have on gym, on PE, which is actually, we are one of few school districts that has that requirement for that additional 0.5 credit. And I actually would like for us to maybe have a consideration on removing that, which then circumvents, I believe, a lot of these conversations. I can see a world where next year we're going to be talking about an exemption for pickleball. I could see us, so many new sports and new things come along, and to be honest, the adults many times get in the way of progress or get in the way through their slow understanding for what the appetite is for many students. My son was a Ultimate Frisbee player, and I remember teasing him about it, and then I went to an Ultimate Frisbee match and saw how physical it was and how much exertion there was. And GHSA, being slow to recognize that as a sanctioned sport, I think is indicative of why maybe we should have a broader conversation about eliminating the 0.5 credit requirement as a board. Mind you, we're one of few, I think probably one of the only in the Metro Atlanta area that has that requirement.
Just us and DeKalb, I think just kind of understanding the administration's recommendation and intent of having that extra PE credit will be good. Will be good to understand as well.
Miss, are you still on the line? Do you want to speak to the, from an academic lens about the PE requirement? I don't know if she's still there, but there's value academically to PE as a course requirement. Okay.
She can speak.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, we, the PE community, Our teachers love the fact that we have the extra PE. It gives us the opportunity to teach kids lifetime skills and lifetime activities and different things they can do beyond school. We also, SEL is a big portion of what we do. And we like to continue that because when you do just the health and the personal fitness, that is all that you're getting. The personal fitness is not aimed toward the sports and the lifetime activities. It's just aimed at the fitness aspect of it, the basics. And the other classes allow us the opportunity to be able to go deeper with getting kids to understand like what it takes to be a helpful individual for a lifetime. So it has been something that has been very successful in our district. I understand the PE exemption piece of it, but it is something that has definitely been an asset to us as a district. And it also allows for more kids to be in that type of environment, to learn teamwork and collaboration, cooperation, being able to be resilient. So these things we've seen over the years have been very important for our students and our scholars. So we would love to keep that extra PE piece because we just can't get it all in that health and that personal fitness class. We need that second PE to be able to go deeper. So it has definitely been beneficial. It's something that I would like to keep. I am definitely an advocate for health and PE because we know that like no matter what you do, no matter what job you have, no matter what career path you choose, learning how to take care of yourself is going to be one of the most important things that you learn. And we just can't get it in that first year as we're, most of the time it's a freshman class. So we take those opportunities, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade year to be able to offer that. And I look at the implications on a higher level. Once you start dropping that has implications on teachers, what we need in our schoolhouses. That will also have an implication on our coaches. We already have a hard time staffing a lot of our coaching positions. And if you can look at the numbers, about 90% of our coaches are health and PE teachers. My fear is if we get rid of that, it has bigger implications, not just with the kids, but with the teachers and athletics. So I am an advocate for keeping it. I definitely understand we are in the process of, increasing what we do in our PE classes to make it a more meaningful and a more quality type program. So I am an advocate for keeping the additional PE credit.
Mrs. Jelks, is there, do you see a world where if we did not have the requirement that there would be a shift or a drastic enough shift in enrollment in PE classes that schools would then have different considerations for how many teachers to allot for physical education or anything of that sort?
Yes, I do. Because we're having a hard time now with the teachers that we do have, finding quality coaches to coach these sports.
Can you say more in regards to the physical education, health science component separate from the youth sports coaching side?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Can you speak more so towards like the class of physical education as separated from coaches for youth sports? So I guess I hope I'm being clear, but I see them as two completely different things, right? So like we have the coaches who are staying after school, doing practices, going to the games, giving up their weekends. I was a flag football coach, swimming coach, baseball coach, basketball coach at Wesley, and Drew Charter for 10 years between the two schools. So I understand that world. But I'm talking about the actual certified teachers who are teaching physical education. Do you feel that there will be some impact on those positions, on enrollment in those classes, to the point that we would lose opportunities for teachers to be in those positions that schools maybe would want to move away? And what would you base your perspective on that on?
Okay, I'm actually getting a lot of feedback, but I can speak to what I think I hear you asking. But as we stand today, in a lot of our high schools, we are scrambling to find coaches. The rule from GHSA has been that it's been a certified teacher. They have made some changes, but as a district, we wanted to keep it as certified teachers. We don't have teachers just jumping at the bit to coach sports in our district. So with the decrease in number of PE teachers, there's going to be a decrease in quality coaches for a lot of our programs. Not anyone can just they can come and be a lay coach if they're outside of the district, but we are not allowing them to be head coaches at this current time. There's a lot of liability that we feel that educators hold in regards to being head coaches, that some people who are, when you've been an educator, is not your primary source of income, that the viewpoint is different. The vantage point is a little different. So our coaches, our PE teachers have, done a phenomenal job in securing these positions, but again, it's still not enough with what we have. So, I feel like, once we take that credit off, there are going to be a lot of kids that won't be taking PE. They're taking it now because it's required. So I do know that once that is dropped, that you will see a change in what it will look like in athletics with coaches.
Do we know what percentage of our youth sports coaches are PE teachers?
You saying which percentage of PE teachers like coach at the rec center?
No. What percentage of our GHSA sanctioned sports are coached by PE teachers as opposed to non-PE teachers?
I would say about 85% of the coaches that we have on staff, our head coaches are PE teachers.
And do we have definitive
But
numbers?
I can get with Corey and we can give you numbers. We can give you exact numbers.
Yeah, we can provide that later. Yes.
Yeah.
And my last question is the honorarium, because I'm just in my mind thinking about even at my own high school that I teach at, the grand majority of the coaches at my school are from the social studies department or the science department. They're not necessarily just the PE teachers. This is just from my own lived experience. My question is, though, is the honorarium or stipend, I'm not sure what we call it, that we give to teachers for being coaches, is that a factor in the willingness of teachers to take on the extra hours to be a coach?
Well, the board did approve last June for a stipend, a supplement increase for each of our sports. And our department did a Metro Risa study on the amount of the supplements that were offered to those sports around the Metro Atlanta area. And so our previous director of athletics, Jasper Drew, brought that back. There were some discussions on it, and it was approved last year. So we have increased the supplements for those particular sports. We will be looking at those supplements, periodically, just to see how they match up with our Metro Atlanta area schools districts, just to see if there needs to be some further discussions on that. But
You know what the supplement is now, or what?
It varies on different sports. Some sports increased by 30 to 40% than they were previously.
Do we know what the number is?
I don't know specifically what those particular numbers are. I can get those numbers to you, but I don't know specifically right offhand what those numbers are.
If you wouldn't mind getting that information to us, and then I would like to know, with the sports that pay a supplement higher than other sports, are you seeing more people wanting to raise their hand for those positions than those where you either don't get anything or maybe you get a lesser amount?
What we've seen is that individuals that really have a deep desire to develop kids in a particular sport, the money is not a major factor for them. It was a great increase for them because they felt as though now they're getting compensated for the time that they're put in. That's the major thing that we see.
Right.
When you're dealing with development of kids and student athletes, specifically in certain sports, there's a large amount of time that's associated with it. So what we've seen from our office is that time that you have to spend with the sport is kind of a determining factor. Not used to be supplement, but when we went up with the supplement, we still saw that time that is spent with those particular sports is probably a greater deterrence, I guess you could say, for some individuals than it would be for others.
Yeah, so that's really good information or inquiries. And so if it's okay to allow the administration to get that data to us before we, I appreciate this dialogue and talking about other spaces that will be impacted. And thanks, Mrs. Jelks, right? Like Elks,
Yes.
Jelks, for that. So definitely, if we can get some additional data and impact data on that for us to consider before we have a deeper dive in that conversation, I think that'll be great for us. In the meantime, knowing that. I know you say that as far as ultimate Frisbee being able to qualify for the exemption for that,
Yes.
have PE credit. My question is, and it goes to what you mentioned earlier, Deputy Superintendent, in terms of, is there a process for, or is there a process for other non-GSA sanctioned sports to be considered? So, is that something?
We can work on spelling some of that out in our administrative regulation. When we change the regulation to include ultimate Frisbee, we can talk as an administrative team about how we would lay that process out, just so other club sport communities could know.
Consider and
That's right.
kind of organize and
Yeah.
make that case as well. Okay.
Is flag football a GHSA sanctioned sport now?
It
That
is.
okay. so
Over the
that
last
was-
3 years,
Yes,
before COVID, I know like they were fighting for years for it to be definitely definitely. I can remember Thero and the other high school that had this growing interest. So I'm really excited to know that they've finally recognized it because it was at least 6 years.
Is there an exemption for flag football
Yes,
in place now?
yes, because it is a GHSA certified sport.
It's a sanctioned sport now, so
But
they
every GHSA sport is not exempted. So I was just asking.
like what
Some of them are
Esports
considered
is not
activities.
exempted.
Esport is considered an activity. It's a GHSA sanctioned activity according to their guidelines.
Got it.
But when you're looking at those sports, the flag footballs that you mentioned, and other sports, that's where it differs between a sport and an activity.
Okay.
Okay.
And that would also apply to like dive, for example, or dance.
Swim and dive is a sport under GHSA guidelines.
Gotcha.
And dance and marching band are exempted from PE. You have to participate for a certain amount of time. They're exempted from the 2 years from the PE requirement,
Thank you.
And the ROTC as well.
and ROTC as well.
And you all did a presentation. Cor, I don't think you were. We have a recent presentation over the last year on these activities, if I can recall, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and that maybe it'd be good to pull. I think Board Member Brooks, I know that was definitely probably before you came on board. Maybe we can pull that presentation that lays out all of that. It's in the appendix. I think it was sometime in like mid to late fall. When we
That
did
sounds
that,
right, yeah.
athletics update, and it had all of those key pieces listed. So we'll get that information. So what we'll do, is there anything you need on our end in terms of the exemption piece of ultimate Frisbee being under there, and then any processes for other sports, other non-sanctioned sports to be considered?
No, I don't think so, but we'll look forward to sharing. Once we firmed up the admin reg, we can share it with you all as an FYI. But
Okay.
I think you're absolutely right that would be a good place to lay out a process so that moving forward, other activities can know.
Okay. All right, great. And then the next step is that you all gather the data in terms of the impact the impact of having the extra 0.5 PE requirement for us, like some of the staffing, pretty much the biggest piece of staffing the staffing concerns that was raised, and how that, that removal could complicate things. Do you mind?
Yes.
Pulling that for us, and then we'll figure out as a committee next time as far as tabling it, being that we have, next month is June, and then we have recess in July, so it easily could, be something that we need to consider when to pick it back up for conversation. Are we good? All right. Thank you so much. We appreciate you all, and thank you all again for the flexibility as well. The other thing, the next item on the agenda is other business.
Just trying to figure, that's for us to determine if there's a need for a meeting next month, and then what would be
Okay.
the timeframe
Okay.
for that.
So the only other thing I have for other business, I know that, and Mr. Gaither and Mr. Glass wanted to lean on you all for this. I know the Student Advisory Council is in the final drafting versions of the Student Bill of Rights. Is that correct? And is that something, is that a topic that you all feel will be ripe for the committee to examine next month's meeting, June's meeting? Okay. Board Member Briscoe Brown or Board Member Brooks, I know we had the opportunity, students presented last week, announced those pieces. Just want to see if you all had any comments or whatnot about exploring the Student Bill of Rights.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. The Student Advisory Council also had another recommendation for instituting a student member of the board, potentially more in an advisory capacity, not necessarily with voting power. And I think that's a conversation I would like to explore. I think having in real time student voice on our dais would be very instrumental, and I think progressive for us as a board to consider.
Absolutely, yeah. We've explored this conversation for over the last couple of years, and actually pulled together what some districts across the country have been doing, and also GSBA been instrumental in providing some guidance as well. So we can get it right. So maybe we can also start the conversation initially at next month's meeting and kind of map out a work plan or something to that degree to move it forward, because it's not going to be as simple as some of the other things that's come before us. So we'll table that there. And then the second thing I know that we had earmarked to circle back with in June was the discipline piece.
And
And the administration was pulling some data in terms of just kind of the impact of the discipline data, suspension pieces for our lower grades, and some of those things that we were thinking of as we're considering a potential revision to the discipline policy.
right, and that specific question about the K-5
Yes.
prohibition on,
Okay, just want to put on the radar,
Yes.
to have that on the agenda for next month. Yes,
We also had talked about the Ethics Commission
yes,
and trying to get that reconstituted, up and running again.
that's right, okay, yep. And so where we are with the Ethics Commission piece, we have that list that we create of those organizations. Ms. Long, did you want to speak anything to that? Because I know we were trying to figure out the best way to contact those entities, the most effective way to contact those entities to ask if they'll be willing to.
Yeah, and you might recall, we cast a pretty broad net in terms of listing related organizations from the legal community as well as from the higher education community that would be interested in helping. I think the next determination for you all as board members is who should reach out to those groups and how, speaking on behalf of the board, asking them their willingness to be included in your policy and to also make that appointment for you.
Okay. Mr. Gaither, for the Ethics Commission, for those entities, who normally makes those calls? It's a list, so we'll get the
Yes.
list and think about a better strategy to divide and conquer, because it's much longer than the initial. And, you know, you have 4 lawyers right here, so some of them, we may have quicker numbers for you. Okay. All right, so I have those 3 things: the Student Bill of Rights, the discipline follow-up, and then the Ethics Commission follow-up. Are we, committee members, anything else?
Everything.
Okay.
That'll do it.
And then for it as our next policy meeting, next committee day will be June 20th. This would need to be one a little bit earlier. I'll be asking for it to be a little bit earlier than 4.
Look, it's
You out of
summertime.
sight. Yeah, I was
Whatever
gonna say, you
wanna
have
do,
no
it's
excuse.
summertime.
You are out for the summer.
Yes, next Friday is it.
Okay, so I'm looking at our calendars, what time potentially works better for us?
Whatever y'all want to do.
All right. Susie, how about you?
Probably mid-late morning.
Like a.
I mean, I can do it any time, but probably prefer not to have to come down here at rush hour.
Okay, what
Say
time is
10.
rush hour? Well, I have Invest Atlanta board meeting, so, does 1 work?
Yeah, I can do
Okay,
one.
1 PM?
That works for you?
Yeah,
Let's do 1 PM.
okay.
Okay,
I think I have flexibility.
okay, thank you. All right, so we'll set it for 1 PM on,
June 20th.
yep, Thursday, June 20th, committee meeting day. All righty? All right, Mr. Gaither, is there a need for public comment?
Madam Chair, no public comment at this time.
All right, hearing none, I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, it's been properly moved by Cynthia Briscoe Brown. Do I have a second? Second by Board Member Brooks. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We are good to go. Thank you guys so much. I know we stayed a little bit over. I appreciate your time.